Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om 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 Shri Ram Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai 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 Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai 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 Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai 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 Ram Hari Om Pranam to you all. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. We are in second chapter. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Sankhya Yoga. So Sanjaya explained about the Arjuna's condition. Sanjaya said to Arjuna, who was drowned in distress, with eyes brimming with tears of despondency, and who stood there possessed by Kripa, the divine power of grace that will soon make Krishna transmit the teaching, Madhusudana began to speak. So Lord starts speaking now. So the grand dialogue between the wonderful teacher and his beloved disciple begins in this chapter. The disciple is drowned in sorrow. At the right needed hour of life, the healing hand of the divine companion is extended. Nothing but the knowledge of the self, that is Atmagnana, can root out the misery caused by ignorance. The misery caused by ignorance can be rooted out by Atmagnana. Here the master is Madhusudana. Madhu means honey or a heady drug. It represents ignorance, delusion, moha. Madhusudana is the one who knows how to cure the delusion caused due to ignorance. So Madhusudana means who knows how to cure the delusion caused by ignorance. The transmission of spiritual knowledge is always preceded by the manifestation of divine grace. Only when the Atman chooses does the Atman reveal himself, is an Upanishadic declaration. A deep longing from within for realization and contact with a Gnani outside to guide are the signs of a chosen one. Such a sacred moment is unfolding now between Arjuna and Krishna. Here Arjuna is possessed by divine grace. So the general interpretation for Kripaya Vishtam is that Arjuna was overcome with pity and sympathy. Compassion towards all arose in him. However, if we closely observe the situation and the word used by Vedavyasa, we will not fail to note that there is a deep spiritual connotation in the usage of the word Kripaya, Kripaya Vishtam, Kripaya. So it provides ample room for the interpretation as the power of grace. Here the immensity of Krishna's grace has descended on Arjuna. The power of the Lord has possessed him. Thus he is made ready to receive the downpour of the celestial waters from the cloud filled with the bliss of non-dual experience. Krishna is the blue cloud that has arisen not of the Krishna is the blue cloud that has arisen out of the waters of the bliss from the nectarian ocean of Brahman, says Shankaracharya. So amongst all the Upanishads, it is the Kathopanishad that the Bhagavad Gita closely follows. There too the word Avesha appears. Shraddha, Avivesha. Nachiketa was possessed by Shraddha. Shraddha entered his being at the opportune moment. An immense mass of faith arose in him to know the Supreme. This thirst to receive the knowledge of Brahman is Shraddha. That itself is Kripa. First, Kripa is awakened in the heart of the disciple, then and only then will he be able to surrender his ego to the Master. So surrendering the ego, we need the grace of the Lord. By ourselves, we may not be able to surrender. What is the surrender we have to do is ego. We need to, our ego to be submitted to the Lord. Surrender his ego to the Master. The Master's grace possesses the disciple and prepares the field. Hence it is called Avesha. This makes the disciple surrender, and then happens the transmission of knowledge of the self. Though Arjuna seemed despondent, the Lord saw through him. For behind his sadness and breakdown, was hidden the mighty force of Jignasa, a deep yearning to know the truth, to absorb the true spiritual experience. A little bit of chiding was all that was necessary to stoke the fire and make it blaze forth. Arjuna's eyes were full of tears. He was indeed blabbering in confusion about dharma sankata. He was in self-pity. Sympathy for his dear ones was eating away at his conscience. Most commentators have said that this compassion towards his relatives was certainly colored by his mamata, mineness. Me and mine, mineness. If we carefully reconsider Arjuna's words in the previous chapter, it will become clear that he knows that the effect of the war will be irredeemably devastating. Whatever he predicts as the consequences of the war are factually undeniable. Therefore, we cannot simply brush aside Arjuna's kripa as a mere attachment to his dear ones. He is indeed none other than an extension of Krishna. See what Aswatthama says. After the 14th day of the war, when he tried his very best to kill Arjuna, when he could not do so, he became despondent and withdrew from the warfare temporarily. While retreating, he declared, Arjuna and Krishna only seem to be two, but they are one. Arjuna and Krishna seem to be two, but they are one only. In other instance, Krishna tells Arjuna, Arjuna, the one who hates you hates me, and the one who instance Krishna tells Arjuna, Arjuna, the one who hates you hates me, and the one who follows you follows me. This is a great declaration. If we harbor hate towards a devotee, we are in fact hating the Lord Himself. If we hate a devotee, we are hating the Lord Himself, because Lord is seated in everybody's heart, no? So whomever we hate, we are hating the Lord seated within them. Mataji used to... Haji? Haji? Yeah. Mataji used to say, if you hate anybody, you are hating Papa. If you are loving anybody, you are loving Papa. Papa means the subtle, mysterious power which is there as all-pervading reality outside, indwelling reality inside, within our hearts. If we follow a devotee of the Lord, we are indeed following the Lord. The Veda too uses the words Krishna and Arjuna. The dark night is Krishna, the bright day is Arjuna. These two are not two, they are one whole. What is seen in Arjuna now is a semblance of the compassion with which Krishna went to Hastinapur to stop the war. But Arjuna's compassion is of no avail at this point. Not only can he stop the war, he cannot desist from fighting either. If he renounces now, all those noble ones lined up on his side to protect Dharma will die at the hands of the evil Duryodhana. The Dharma that we follow today is perhaps a part of the legacy left for us by the epoch-making fight of Arjuna thousands of years ago. Otherwise, who knows, Duryodhana's rule might have ended and erased the Vaidika Dharma from this Bharatavarsha. He might have done away with all that is noble in India. The very purpose of the Krishna Avatara was for Dharma Sthapana alone. So after hearing Arjuna speak, the Lord transfigured. The being with the cloud-colored body and lightning-colored attire suddenly became boundless and spoke these words to Arjuna. That was second sloka. We have read, I think. Anyway, we'll read once again. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Kutastva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samupastitam Anarya Justamasvargyam Akirtikaram Arjuna. So Sri Bhagavan said, O Arjuna, from where did this inadvertence and lack of intelligence come upon you? At the right juncture where you must act, you stand shattered. This does not suit a noble one, an Arya. This would certainly bar your entry to divine worlds and also affect your glory here. So, this sloka is an introduction to the Gita, because this is how Lord starts speaking now only, no? This is the first sloka, I think. He was not talking, no, all this. Throughout he was just keeping quiet, silent. Now, compassionate Lord, no? He started speaking. The word Vishama has already been commented upon in the previous chapter. The entire teaching of the Gita is to lead us from Vishama to Sama. Samsara is Vishama, Yoga is Sama. The state where one is not centered in the self is Vishama. To be in the self is Sama. So, if we abide in our own self, that is called Sama, equanimity. Otherwise, it is Vishama, Samsara. Samsara is like a river that could sweep us off our feet at any moment. Be on guard. Never lose your alertness. Jagrata, wants the Shruti. In Sanskrit, Kashmala means something very petty. It denotes feebleness. Here we have taken the literary to translate Kashmalam as Pramada, inattention. Pramada is another name for death, says Sanas Sujatiya. Buddha too says Pramada is death. Here Bhagavan uses the word Kashmalam at the very beginning. First starting only, he started using the word Kashmalam. There is great significance for this. Alertness is the most essential quality for a warrior. Alertness is the most essential quality for a warrior. One slip from alertness and his head is gone. In fighting, no, alertness is not there, their head will go. In life too, losing alertness means losing life. So dangerous. In life too, losing alertness means losing life. It is one form of death. In spiritual life as well, when a person on the path of Atma Vichara forgets his goal and becomes inattentive, he returns to identifying with the body. Again he comes back to lower level. And body, of course, is another name for death. Body, of course, is the another name for death. Thus, losing one's alertness and succumbing to dullness is being pitied as Kashmalam, pettiness. It is a negative quality. The sole aim of Mumukshu is to awaken the fire of Vichara and to be ever aware of his real nature. What is his real nature? He is the self, Satchitananda. Such a one is Sthita Prajna. We shall discuss this term later in this chapter. That is 54th sloka to 72. That is in second chapter only. In the end it comes. Anything that makes us forget our identity, our deathless nature, and makes us identify with the body is Kashmalam. Anything that makes us forget our identity, our deathless nature. We are birthless and deathless, no? If we forget that nature and makes us identify with the body is Kashmalam. Thinking about the non-self is Kashmalam. What is non-self? What is the self? Anatma, Atma. Anatma is body, mind, intellect and senses. We are thinking we are no, that no, it is not. We are not that. Identifying ourselves with BMI. Thinking about the non-self is kashmalam. It is pramada, pettiness, and it leads a dukkha, suffering. To be free of suffering, meditate on the Atman, contemplate on the self, your real nature. Then it will lead you to bliss, your very nature. So while discarding the old Yagnopavita, the sacred thread, and putting on a new one of the mantras chanted by the Brahmins is Jirnam, Kashmala, Dushitam, Visarjami. This old thread which has become worn out and impure through Kashmala, I give up. The thread has become unfit due to two reasons. The first is due to Jirnam. It has become old and withered. The second is Kashmala. Just by being associated with the body and soiled by its sweat and dirt, the thread has become impure. Similarly, due to its assumed identification with the body, the inner thread I becomes impure. Similarly, due to its assumed identification with the body, actually it is not BMI, but it assumed that it is body, mind, intellect. No? Due to its assumed identification with the body, the inner thread I becomes impure. The next noteworthy word in this verse is Arya. It is one of the most misunderstood words of our time. It is generally understood as the name of a race. The word Arya occurs 36 times in the Rig Veda. 36 times it appears in the Rig Veda. And in none of these instances has it been used as a racial name. Buddha has used the word Arya to denote a noble one. The etymology of Arya is Aranam Yashya Shraddha. One who is fortressed with Shraddha. An Arya is he who has fortressed his spiritual life with absolute alertness. Shankaracharya says, this Brahma Tattva, which is extremely subtle, Brahma Tattva is extremely subtle. This Brahma Tattva, which is extremely subtle, is not available for the grass-minded people. For the grass-minded, the Brahma Tattva is not available. Only an Arya. An Arya means a yogi with a perfectly pure mind and a highly subtle intelligence. That is called Arya. Shankaracharya says Arya means a yogi with a perfectly pure mind and a highly subtle intelligence. He is able to receive it. Brahma Tattva can be received by, who is fit to receive the Brahma Tattva as per Shankaracharya? A yogi with a perfectly pure mind and a highly subtle intelligence. So we should check whether we have all this. A yogi with a perfectly pure mind and a highly subtle intelligence. These are the two qualifications he says. One is perfectly pure mind. Second one is highly subtle intelligence. Perfectly pure mind, highly subtle intelligence. Both are needed if we want to have the Tattva Gnana, Brahma Tattva. So Arya means a yogi with a perfectly pure mind and a highly subtle intelligence. So that person is fit to receive the Brahma Tattva. So the word Arya really means the one who is qualified for Atma Gnana. The one who is qualified or Atma Gnana is called Arya. What is the qualification? Perfectly pure mind will be there, and then highly subtle intelligence. So that person is qualified to Atma Gnana. He has seen the certainty of death and wants to be free of it by transcending it. He has seen the certainty of death and wants to be free of it by transcending it. Hence he seeks the Nivritti Marga of Vedanta. The other path is that of Kamya Karma, the path of attaining Swarga. Here Bhagavan warns Arjuna that if he wallows in this current state, he will neither attain Nirvana nor Swarga, Asvargyam. If so, will he at least get a good name in this world? Bhagavan declares that he will lose that too. Akirtikaram Arjuna. So one should never forsake this noble path. One should never forsake his alertness. Whatever the reason, Arjuna, wake up. The word Samupasthitam is also significant. The words Samupasthitam and Upanishad have similar meanings. The prefix Sam means very well. Upa means something that is near, intimate. And Nishida and Sthitam both mean to stay or to abide. Thus, Samupasthitam implies that we must be established firmly in our real nature and not in Vishama. So instead of being established in the self, O Arjuna, you are now being swept away by your mind. That is what Krishna says. This is the inner meaning. Instead of being established in the self, O Arjuna, you are now being swept away by your mind. Come out of this mind plane. To be a slave of mental moods is Kashmalam. To be a slave of mental moods is Kashmalam. Shake off this inner sleep. To be identified with the mind is sleep. What is sleep? To be identified with the mind is called sleep. Whether you sleep or think, it amounts to nothing but sleep, because the mind is just another name for sleep. A person is truly awake only when he is free of the mind. We are not free of the mind. That means we are all in sleep. So Lord says only when you come out of the mind, free of the mind, then only you are awake. So we are in wakeful sleepers. A person is truly awake only when he is free of the mind. A devotee asked Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi how he was always unperturbed. Maharishi replied, I never use my mind. I am never associated with the mind. That was the reply given by Maharishi. I never use my mind. I am not associated with the mind. Then we don't get perturbed. This is the secret of the Jivan Mukta. This is a clue for us. Association with the mind is Kashmalam, and disassociation or moving away from the mind is yoga. So Papa says, the words are there. Sit silent. Detach yourself from the mind and watch its activities. The watcher is the real you, the self immortal. Those are the words of Papa. So the moment you detach yourself from the mind, then you are the self. Association with the mind is Kashmalam, and disassociation or moving away from the mind is yoga. The moment the mind is given up, establishment in the self happens. The moment the mind is given up, establishment in the self happens. That's why Papa says every day, you do, board is removed from here. Sit silent, detach yourself from the mind and watch its activities. The watcher is the real you, the self immortal. The moment you disassociate, then you will be established in the self. Mind is merely a shadow. Mind is merely a shadow. And when we identify with the mind, we are certainly asking for sorrow and suffering. Disassociate from it, give it up. Renounce the mind. Mind is a mala, impurity. Here Bhagavan says that it is not merely mala, it is kashmala, an impurity putrefied by the ego. With mala, ego also mixed. So the mind is constantly on the job of hypnotizing us by reminding us about various illusionary limitations. It says you will die, or you will be ill, or you will lose this, and so on. Hence give it up and meditate on the Atman, the self, which is of the nature of peace, bliss, strength, courage, freedom, deathlessness. This is the way to be free, here and now. Not sometime later, here and now. So what are the words we learn now? Mind. Important for our sadhana, no? We have to give it up our mind. We should not associate with our mind. And contemplate, meditate on the self, Atman. Third sloka. Klaivyam asmagama pada naitatyayupapadyate kshodram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktotishta parantapa. O Partha, yield not to the wretched state of feebleness. O Partha, yield not to the wretched state of feebleness. It is unworthy of you. Cast away this faint-heartedness. Born out of attachment to petty things of the world. Wake up, O Parantapa. Wake up, O Parantapa. Parantapa means one of immense tapas. Who has done immense tapas. So free will, when emblazoned by divine grace, becomes a mighty force to free us from will and thus releases us from all bondage. Employ the might of free will and thus, free of all attachments, attain happiness. Is the message of Vedanta. An indomitable will that is free of all cobwebs of faint-heartedness is being referred to here as a true manliness. It is with this power that we must direct our attention towards the source. It is with this power that we must direct our attention towards the source and inquire, who am I? What is my real nature? Meditate thus. Know that you are the eternally free self. Be free here and now, not later. Our peace prayer also, no? Peace prayer every day we read. Adorable presence, thou who art within and without, above and below and all around. Thou who art interpenetrating the very cells of our beings. Thou who art the eye of our eyes, the ear of our ears, the heart of our hearts, the mind of our minds, the breath of our breaths, the life of our lives, and the soul of our souls. Bless us, dear God, To be aware of thy presence now and here. That is how we pray. So Lord also says now and here. So know that you are the eternally free self. Be free here and now. Yield not to the namby-pamby ideas of various limiting beliefs. You do not need any belief to be free. You are the existence in which both beliefs and non-beliefs pass by like mere waves. In you only all these are happening. Go directly to the source. Be established in Sat Chit Ananda. Go directly to the source. Be established in Sat Chit Ananda. This is the direct path of vichara. This is real manliness, the free expression of divine will, Purusha. If this is not possible, take to the path of surrender. We are not able to meditate on the self and realize now and here, then take the path of surrender. Seek out an illumined sage and offer yourself to him. One who can serve and love in surrender is freed of the individual sense and becomes one with the master. One who can serve and love in surrender, he is freed of the individual sense of individuality, and becomes one with the master. This is like a sacred marriage. The Bhagavata says, chaste women win over their husbands by their love. True devotees win over and keep the Lord in their being. Hence the path of surrender is also known as the feminine path. Vichara or bhakti, both lead to the highest experience. Either vichara, enquiry, or bhakti, both lead to the highest experience. The ego must be either explored or surrendered. On the other hand, if one follows neither of these paths, what are the vichara or bhakti, and becomes indolent and inadvertent, the river of destiny will flood over him with all its might and sweep him away. The person has no other recourse. Again and again Lord Krishna says, yield not to weakness. Here the Lord terms such a state as clibium, neither feminine nor masculine. This is a pitiable state, as neither are you capable of putting in effort to inquire, nor are you able to surrender. This does not suit you, Arjuna. You are either do vichara or bhakti, both surrender. Both he is not able to do. So he says, this is not correct. This is not suit you, Arjuna, says Bhagavan. This is a pitiable state, as neither are you capable of putting in effort to inquire, nor are you able to surrender. You are not able to do both. So this does not suit you, Arjuna, says Bhagavan. There is a reason Bhagavan has used this specific word. It is well known that even while disguised as a Klaiba, Arjuna has single-handedly fought a fierce battle in Virata. During the final year of their exile, the Pandavas were in hiding in the Virata Desha. Duryodhana somehow smelt out their whereabouts and led the army of Kurus consisting of Bhishma, Drona and Karna to invade that country. Then Arjuna, as he handmade Bruhannala, fought the Kurus single-handedly and defeated them. And who was his charioteer at that time? It was Uttara Kumara, a faint-hearted prince. Now and then, during the battle, Uttara Kumara would jump out of the chariot and run away in fear of the Kaurava army. Each time Arjuna had to cajole him and bring him back. Even in such an unfavorable situation, Arjuna had fought fiercely and came out victorious. Thus, even as a Klaibya, Arjuna could fight and conquer a whole army on his own. He had displayed no faint-heartedness. Klaibya, he was Arjuna, the way valorous one. He was least perturbed at that time. But see the stark contrast now. Here, even with the Supreme One as his charioteer, why does he tremble and collapse? The only explanation is that this is indeed the Lord's doing. That type of victorious person, how can he become like this? It is all Lord's doing. It is the Lord himself who has breathed into Arjuna the sudden apparent feebleness, and it was done for the divine purpose of bestowing the Gita. So that is why he induced this, so that he can give the Gita. Thus Arjuna became an instrument for bringing the celestial waters of the Gita, the Vaikuntha Ganga, to earth. Hence, as we bow down to Lord Narayana, we also bow down to Arjuna, the Narottama. Unless this dullness is renounced, failure is certain. Unless the dullness is renounced, failure is certain. Many renounce the world and join an ashram or a spiritual institution in great earnest. Many renounce the world and join an ashram or a spiritual institution in great earnest. For the first few months or years, they strive hard with great enthusiasm and energy. But gradually, they succumb to the dullness of complacency. Their initial enthusiasm to persist in spiritual practices ebbs away. They become feeble-minded and lose all hope of realization in this life. This state of being neither here nor there is insensitivity or Klaibya. So the sole purpose of the entire Vedanta Shastra is to remove the Hridaya Daurbalyam. What is meant by Hridaya Daurbalyam? Here, Hridaya represents the whole being. It includes the mind, senses, the intellect, all of these together. The bala that one needs is the strength of the knowledge of the self. From Atmagnana comes enormous strength, Viryam. Lack of that strength is Daurbalyam. The Upanishad says, through Atma Vidya, one knows I am deathless. My real nature is immortality. From this knowledge arises infinite strength, valor, that is Viryam. Here the Lord gives a clarion call to Arjuna, quoting from the Kathopanishad, Uddhishta Jagrata. Krishna says, Shudram Hridaya Daurbalyam Tektatva Uttishta. Using these words as a whip, Krishna seems to be saying, give up the attachment to petty things of the world. Give up the attachment to petty things of the world. They hold you back from entering the portal of nirvana. Know for certain, you must save yourself. You are your own savior. Wake up, O Parantapa, Paramtapaha. You have done a great amount of tapas in the past. Now too, it calls for tremendous tapas to refine yourself, to pull yourself up from this quagmire of fear, despondency, depression, confusion, clouded thinking and so on. Knowing yourself is the greatest tapas. Knowing yourself, capital S, is the greatest tapas. The bow of vichara is the gandiva that you must use here. And with one-pointedness as the arrow, shoot, O Partha. Thus root out the ignorance, the ego, I, and be free here and now. You are Gudakesha, the sleepless one. Succumb not to the sleep of ignorance. Wake up. See the words of Lord Krishna. So beautifully used, no? Here the Lord gives a clarion call to Arjuna, quoting from the Kathopanishad. Uddhishta, Jagrata. Krishna says, Kshudram Hridaya Daurbalyam Tyaktva Uttishta. Using these words as a whip, Krishna seems to be saying, give up the attachment to petty things of the world. They hold you back from entering the portal of nirvana. Know for certain, you must save yourself. You are your own savior. Wake up, O Parantapa, Parantapa. You have done a great amount of tapas in the past. Now too, it calls for tremendous tapas to refine yourself, to pull yourself up from this quagmire of fear, despondency, depression, confusion, clouded thinking, and so on. Knowing yourself is the greatest tapas. The bow of vichara is the gandiva that you must use here. And with one pointedness as the arrow, shoot. With one pointedness as arrow, shoot, O Partha. Thus root out the ignorance, the ego I. That is the meaning. So it's not that get up and fight with Kauravas, not that one. So inner meaning is this. All of us, we are all Arjunas. In life battle, what we have to do, Lord Krishna is giving beautifully. Knowing yourself is the greatest tapas. The bow of vichara is the gandiva that you must use here. And with one pointedness as the arrow, shoot, O Partha. Thus, root out the ignorance, the ego I, and be free here and now. You are Gudakesha, the sleepless one. Succumb not to the sleep of ignorance. Wake up. This is the call for all of us. Not 5,000 years back to one person called to Arjuna. It is for all of us. One who knows the omnipotent nature of the self no more gets overpowered by the senses. One who knows omnipotent nature of the self no more gets overpowered by the senses. His senses and mind are easily subdued by the awakening of the power of the self. That is Viryam. Here Krishna urges Arjuna to behold that power in him. The unruffled, ever peaceful Krishna says, O Partha, yield not to weakness. You are a great tapaswin. Invoke the power of the self. The greatest tapas is to awaken the energy of the transcendental and to hold it in one's awareness. Holding in awareness the energy which is devoid of the ego is tapas. Holding in awareness the energy which is devoid of the ego is tapas. Through such a body, the power of the Lord flows. Through such a body, the power of the Lord flows. So we'll recap it. 5 minutes are there. So what are the things we learned for our sadhana? Any words we remembered? Some word must have touched, all may not, we may not remember. Some words, something. Very good. Intelligence. To receive Brahma Tattva or Atma Gnana, what is required is perfectly pure mind and subtle intelligence. Beautiful. Something. One word is enough. Something should go. Whole satsang we may not be able to recap it, but one word is enough for our sadhana. That goes, that touches, that kindles what is there in our inside. Highly subtle intelligence, perfectly pure mind. These two are needed for receiving Atmanjnana. Then disassociate with the mind. You should always disassociate. Association with the mind is Kashmalam. Disassociate with the mind. That's why Papa says daily you practice, sit silent, detach yourself from the mind and watch its activities. Means observe. Do not travel with the mind, just watch. You are the watcher. Then Papa says, sit silent, detach yourself from the mind and watch its activities. What all is going on. But don't go with it. Don't mix it. The watcher is the real you, the self immortal. The watcher who is doing that itself is that self, that you. The watcher is the self immortal. So we are the watcher actually. We are the knower of the mind. We should not get involved in the mind. Thoughts, mind is nothing but thoughts. Thoughts will be coming and going. I should not travel with that thought. So we should disassociate and watch. Papa says if you start watching the thought, slowly it will come down and then disappear. That means mind as such will go away. That's why Ramana Maharishi's words we should never forget. Ramana Maharishi, a devotee asked Bhagavan, Ramana Maharishi, how he was always unperturbed. Maharishi replied, I never use my mind. I am never associated with the mind. Any other words? Each one, something should touch in the satsang. One word. Root out the ego. Very good. That is most important. If that is done, everything is possible. So with what we have to root out the ego? What is Gandiva? Vichara. Then one-pointedness, arrow. One-pointedness is the arrow. Bow and arrow. Vichara and one-pointedness. With that we should root out the ego. Or otherwise surrender. Accept everything cheerfully with love. Because everything is happening by His will alone. For our ultimate good. So accept. Papa did that, surrender. Bhakti path. In Bhakti Marga, surrender. Whatever is happening throughout In Quest of God, Papa's first book, so everywhere he just accepted. It is his will and for our ultimate good. That is how Papa realized. Surrender. He chose the Bhakti Marga, surrender. Some people choose Vichara Marga like Ramana Maharishi. So both are good. God says both are okay. Both lead to the highest experience of the self. Vichara or Bhakti Marga. Bhakti Marga is surrender. Surrender to His will. Whatever is happening in our life, accepting. Without reservation. Without expecting any change. It is God's will. No grumbling, no complaints. Just accept cheerfully, then we are at peace. Yes, anything else? Any points? No points remembered. Not book seeing. Just touch it means it will come. Spontaneously it should come. One word, any one word. So that no, that word goes on in our mind. No? It helps for our sadhana. Good, anyway. So important is disassociate with the mind. Root out the ego. Then we should know what is the qualification to receive the jnana. Perfect pure mind, perfectly pure mind. Other one is highly subtle intelligence. Both are needed. Good, some points at least. Good. Okay, then we will see tomorrow. We'll continue tomorrow. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om, pranams to you all. Hari Om.